And I think rave culture is exactly in that place. We now have, since Oklahoma and the Unabomber, I think it's becoming more clear that this system, this current competitive system, is so competitive that it's beginning to tear itself apart. From the right wing, from the left wing, people are clearly dissatisfied with it. They give different interpretations to it, but it's beginning to tear itself apart. And it's a very, besides increasing security because of this, I think we also have to look at what drives somebody so crazy. Either you say the human species just is crazy, or you have to say, well, something is driving these people crazy. Why would somebody walk into a supermarket and start blowing people away? Why? What drove them crazy? What in society, what in our culture is driving people to the edge? And to some extent, everybody feels some of the pressure of the system. The weaker ones, or maybe the more open-minded ones, get driven. The more idealistic ones get driven. I'm not trying to justify terrorism, but we have to look at why people are driven to that. And it's competition, basically. Karl Marx once predicted that capitalism would have to fall, and that when it did, the capitalists would compete to sell the rope to the victors to hang them with.
In Wiltshire, after violent clashes between police and a convoy of hippies, the convoy crashed through roadblocks to try to get into an illegal pop festival. The convoy of 150 trucks, coaches and caravans moved off shortly after midday to drive to Stonehenge in defiance of the law. They were 400, mostly men. On their 10-mile journey, they were observed from the air. Then the first roadblock, the holidaying public, now hopelessly caught up, turned
Afterwards,
round.
you'll see the raw footage of what happened.
The convoy came to a standstill at another block, then turned across the fields. They cut down fencing in preparation for the violent confrontation that followed, in which many arrests had been made. Windscreens were smashed and unlit petrol bombs were hurled. Police reinforcements have now been called up, but Stonehenge has remained closed to the public.
Today if this carries on.
Why don't you go to hospital? Well, we don't want to be split up. We don't want to be arrested.
Me dog, me cookies and me home.
We don't want to be arrested. If we leave here, we'll get arrested and split up. She'll be taken one place, I'll be taken another. We'll probably lose our own. We'll have no livelihood, nowhere to live. We just want to get off this field as peacefully and as quietly as we can. And just go. Leave the county. You know? Why can't you just leave the field? Let us go. If we leave, we'll be arrested. All of us. But there's people you see bleeding. I ain't gonna promise it's being bashed. Not now. You know, you're in people, it's real people with real things. People just don't wash no more. And this lot, all these coppers are just here for one reason. And it's to cause trouble. I mean, I don't want to cause trouble. I ain't gonna cause trouble. I don't want to stick or anything. I just want to go. Just go quiet. So maybe when you're born, I'll have a decent start in life, not surrounded by 1,000 coppers with sticks and shields. You're with the question. What is this doing? It's this our trouble. It's a religious war, man. It's fucking us about. We're going to
Festival, yeah, where nobody has to go and they don't want to go, yeah? Nobody's asking they have to go onto the festival site. It's a quiet festival. We leave the society alone. They leave us alone.
They say that you've been throwing bricks and people have been hurt.
By ambulance, yeah? There's no
I was just behind them vehicles when they pulled up at the front there. And the police started running straight down the road. The first ones they got to, I seen it. They just smashed straight through the windscreens with the trains. They didn't ask anything, just smashed them in. And that's the only thing that people could do to get out of the way was to drive into this field.
I just went for a walk around there and they said I was going to get arrested for going for a walk around there. We haven't done anything, have we?
No, just talk about your today. Just let me have my little say and then you can come back in. Those of you that come out under those circumstances will be interviewed and dealt with.
Not of which you'll be locked up and dealt with.
If I suspect that you've been involved in some of the offences that have occurred today, then you would be arrested. Well, that's it. Now, wait a minute. I'm not here to bargain with you. I'm here to say something to you for you to consider. Now, you don't have to make an answer now. You can get through to me.
We want to go to Stonehenge.
Well, the Stonehenge Festival, as you know, has been cancelled this year.
Stonehenge an alternative site.
Now, hang on. One of the things I said to you, gentlemen, was that I'm not prepared to enter into a dialogue now. I've told you what the position is. I wanted to go away and think about it, and then come back and speak to me.
There's no thinking to be done about it, is there? Well, what we want to talk to you about is
cooperative one, great culture that's exciting. We now have since Oklahoma and the Unabomber, I think it's becoming more clear that this system, this current competitive system, is so competitive that it's beginning to tear itself apart. And right wing, left wing, people are clearly dissatisfied with it. Given the recommendations to it, it's beginning to tear itself apart. It's a very sense of peace and security because of this. People start to look at what drives crazy. What is society, what our culture is driving people to the edge. To some extent, everybody feels some of the pressure of the system. The weaker ones are maybe the more open-minded ones get driven. The more idealistic ones get driven. I'm not trying to justify terrorism, but we have to look why people are driven to that. And this competition. Karl Marx once predicted that capitalism drafted forward. And when it did, capitalists would compete to sell the gold, the victors behind them. It seems like the system, even we see what's going on, we can't stop it. Nobody seems to be in charge. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I don't think there's some cabal or bilateral information or something like that about controlling it. I think they're trying to, just like everybody else is trying. I think the system, the culture itself is what's driving it, and there's no individual managed to do something about it, which is okay, what the world needs to do is a new cooperative culture. Ideally, we need to see the appearance of a cooperative meme. A meme is like a cultural virus that you see it in TV, you see it in media. We need a cooperative meme that has to rapidly spread in the rest of the planet very quickly, and very quickly become the dominant cultural meme. In a way, we have to make that cooperative attitude, lifestyle has to become fashionable. Now, every time I use the word fashionable in America, I can see that it's making the wrong connotations. In the 60s, I don't care. In the 60s, I don't care if somebody started meditating or dancing because they read about it in a magazine. As long as they start meditating or dancing, I don't care why they started. One is to get people to that point, and that's what fashion, and that's what the Sydney thing we came up with it quite consciously aimed at the media, and we wanted to spread a new message quickly. It's the quickest way to change the maximum number of people minimum amount of time. Am I talking too fast, by the way, with my Scottish accent? You know, managing the phone, there are so many things that need changing, and many people are doing good selfless work. The trouble is that this one's saving the robins, saving whales, this one's trying to cut down this one. At one level there's more fragmentation because there are so many good people doing so many separate causes. So somehow we have to bring everybody together into one cultural thing, which is about an overall paradigm shift in the culture. And we can do that, and somehow all good people can somehow be on the same side of some issue. And I think that's a culture, and I think rave culture offers what we can do. So somehow we have to get to one single overall paradigm shift in society, and that jump in all the other issues just automatically dissolve themselves as problems that we saved in Mill Valley and others other people have been making changes. Now, if the human race species really is adapting as a crisis, then it should already at this stage be a sign of a new cultural movement, of a new cultural movement happening within the overall culture. It should already be possible to see that if we really are going to change in time. And I think we can begin to see it more and more. It should be not just here, but it should be spreading widely and rapidly in all the Western democracies where the culture is going on. It should certainly involve youth. It almost certainly have its own new style of music, its own new form of dancing, as a social movement does. So these, if we look for some real change happening, then these are the things we should be looking for. It should also, in my opinion, be linked with a lot of nature. This the best that punk has to offer, and I'm not here to knock it, is, despite the best has to offer, really all it's doing is refusing to be part of the overall corruption of materialism. But refusing to be part of it is not going to change anything. Certainly not in time. So, rave culture, exploding through all the Western democracies, every single one of them, and quite a few others, and it shows every sign of capturing America over the next year or two, I would say, as the dominant cultural meme that will replace the kind of late punk, grunge thing which is current at the moment. One of the exciting things about rave culture is that there are no stars. The rave scene has now been going in England for 8 years, and I don't think there's one DJ name who's sort of universally known anywhere. Now, if you think of rock and roll, within 8 years of rock and roll beginning, there were established superstars whose names are still known today. This is not happening within rave culture. And that's a very, very healthy thing to remember, that it's the cooperative side of it that I think is the most important. In England now, where the economic collapse, which I think is happening in the Western system, I actually think the Western system is on its knees, although it's very hard to quite see it over here. But in England it's much more clear that the economic collapse has gone quite far, and people in the rave scene there are now, they've been forced to cooperate. The system collapse is good for you because it forces everyone to cooperate. If you want to put on a party, somebody's got the records, somebody has a venue, this one can find a generator. Everybody's forced to chip in what they have. The yuppie myth of somehow one person having all the technology and able to do it all himself is not nearly so possible there, and so it's forcing cooperation on people a lot. In England they call it a depression. England and Europe are supposed to be in rather a long-term depression, but I think it's important to realise that the word depression is what the people at the top, the people who think they have something to lose, they're depressed. But in England now you'll meet thousands of young people who really would accept that they're never going to have a proper job, ever. I mean, it's just gone beyond that. The system cannot contain those kind of people anymore. So they're never going to have a proper job, and yet I've never seen such an outbreak of creativity, even in the hippie times. So I'm a bit of an expert on that, but I've never seen such creativity as I see in England now. And I've let them, 6 months ago, everybody's running around producing their own little magazine, organising a social protest, putting on parties, exhibition, painting. They're all really busy. They've got a very small stipend from the government. They have a welfare state there, so everybody's able to live on health foods and so on. They can live quite healthily, and they're being very, very creative. It's like as the system lets go, somehow people's creativity, the people's creativity comes out. The imagination and creativity are freed in some way. Now, I said before that after university I spent a lot of time traveling the planet looking for a culture which would take the best. That didn't work. After about 2 decades I realised that materialism is a stage which you have to pass through before you can reject it, and so I came back to work here. What we did was we sat down and we analysed what the sum total of the problems were, and they're pretty much like an outline of what we didn't pick up in detail. The second thing that I tried to work out was where the most hope for a change could appear. We decided it was within youth culture. That was the freest, the least government control, if you like. It was also clearly had the most idealism, the most energy, the most commitment, or the least commitment to the current competitive culture. And then we calculated just what the new average lifestyle should be to be adopted and spread very quickly across the planet in order to change things. What would that new lifestyle be? And then let's try and make it fashionable. Remembering fashionable, good or bad, I don't care why somebody starts doing something. Because it's fashionable, as long as it starts meditating, dancing, and being relevant, I don't care what I'm fashionable is doing, but yeah, it's fashionable. If we want to change a lot of people, I think very quickly. So we worked out what that new lifestyle should be, which was exactly this. And we set out to try and make that fashionable through the absolutely large gatherings in the open air fashion. I also should encourage everybody to work together both with each other and others who are not part of the movement. We don't want a confrontational attitude, since that would just spread the problem further. And the city, I better give a definition of city. The city is something. Basically, we talk about two hemispheres in the brain, which is what I call the left brain, the techno-person hemisphere, and that's to do with long-term planning, budgeting, property, overhaul, business school. The other hemisphere is probably the heavy hemisphere. And basically, a city is trying to harmonise these two hemispheres, both in its own personal life, first of all, not first of all, but that's one part of it. The other part is trying to harmonise the hemispheres of its planet between technical and organics, and how you have work bank or proper balance between these two things. And that's what the city is. Notice that the city is not somebody who's achieved this, the city is somebody who's noticed and recognized the imbalance and is working towards bringing that balance to itself and its planet. So there we learn that there are city philosophy, the magazine that time called Encyclopaedia Psychedelica, and I was particularly nice outbreak of consciousness raised among the youth. And boom, just as we were thinking that, the acid house party scene and already scene burst through my door. But let me back up a little bit and put this again as the reason so many people became hippies, including me in the 60s, there were three components to it. There was a political component, there was an ecological component, and there was a personal spiritual component. The political component I've kind of touched on, that was basically we saw politics, the old competitive politics as just that, competitive and destructive. The opposition is very tricky as to oppose. Maybe it worked 300 years ago, but it's definitely not the system we have today. So hippies are saying a plague and all that, we don't want anything to do with that kind of competitive system. The ecological component was this. When you remember Tim Leary turn on, tune in and drop out of the sick system which was becoming a threat to the planet, that was basically the point. So I made the decision, as I did in 1965 after I took my honors degree in psychology, to become a hippie. Really what it was a brave personal decision to basically reduce my own personal level of consumption by about 70%. I decided I won't have a fancy sports car, I won't have my own private motor launch, I'll give up that lifestyle, I'll become a traveller, I'll see the world, I'll write in poetry, I'll live on beaches, I'll read fine literature and I'll go for that. I'll lower my consumption level by about 70%. And that's what I've done ever since, basically. That was what the planet needed, and that's what the hippie opted for. And I've lived that life ever since, until I became a hippie, basically, in the mid-80s. And I had to invent the hippie concept, really, to kind of explain to myself who I was and who my friends were and why. Now, I put it to you that if everybody at that time in the 60s who were armed with the same information about the planet had made the same decision, if everybody had voluntarily opted to reduce their consumption level and their expectations, we would now be living on a very beautiful, harmoniously developed planet with none of these problems we have now. But people didn't have the courage, and so now I think they're going to have to live through the objective result of their not making those decisions then, and now I think being forced to lower their consumption level. It's not so clear here, but it's coming, and it's very clear in Europe and a lot of the West. Now the personal spiritual component brings us directly to the rave. The hippie conclusion was that mankind, the Western man, was basically stuck in his head, and that the only chance for the planet, because the Western system was a threat to the planet, the only chance for the planet was the discovery, or more likely the rediscovery, of some kind of technique or some kind of technology which would one by one through all the people in the West, we individually, one by one, put them through a process where they got out of their heads and back into their heart and their body. In other words, as George Gurdjieff, a great teacher in the early 20th century, said, he called mankind three-brain beings. We have an intellectual brain, an emotional brain, and a physical moving brain. And these brains are equal in every way. One is not more important than the other, but they should work in harmony, all three together, as a team, cooperating. Now, that was the hippie analysis of what would have to happen in the West. We would need some kind of strategy, some kind of technology, some kind of technique to enable everybody to get this balance again. Today, every high street in Britain is offering just such a commodity. Rave, non-stop, rhythmic, African-style, shamanic dance music, which is taking an entire generation out of their heads, back into their hearts and their bodies. So that is actually happening to thousands of young people all across Europe, and it's now spreading into America. So, this is Kate, and I'm going to be talking about trance states, so I thought it'd be a good idea if we had an actual example. Young people dance like this for hours on end. I'll be coming to that now. So anyway, there I was editing and publishing the Encyclopaedia, and taking mass launches and raising young people. When suddenly, these two young guys, Scooby-Doo, as they were called, who were the same team that made magazine today, which was kind of evangelistic, small separation.